welcome aboard, everybody. Welcome here to the Sports Talk Nation. I can't imagine what we're going to be talking about today, can you? Because the New York Mets have now officially traded Justin Verlander. The purge continues for the Amazons. It started on Friday when the Mets traded David Robertson to the Miami Marlins for a couple of prospects, and then it continued on Saturday night when they sent Max Scherzer packing to the Texas Rangers, and it just concludes here with Verlander. Really, the inevitable was going to be reality because the Mets right now are in full rebuild mode. I know that General Manager Billy Epler doesn't want to admit it. He certainly wants to say that they, as we all know, and I'll play that clip for you right here where he says, the intention isn't to do a full rebuild, but to be still competitive in 2024.
But I do want to be clear that it's not a rebuild. It's not a fire sale. It's not a liquidation. This is just a repurposing of Steve's investment in the club.
Well, let's just face facts, folks. Let's just face facts. The Mets are going into rebuild. You want to talk about competitive? I mean, competitive from the standpoint of playoffs, certainly not. Moving forward into 2024. Competitive as in trying to compete in games? Yeah, sure, absolutely. But this is really, before we even talk about the prospects and before we really get into really the minutia of the deal itself, how the hell did we get here? And we got here by the simple fact that the Mets just underachieved all season long. This was a faulty team that was put together by the Mets front office, from Steve Cohen to Billy Epler. $350 million, this salary for this New York Mets team. They had the highest salary cap in baseball history. Not just any team in baseball this year, but in baseball history for a single season. And for that team, with all the money they have spent on whether it be players they brought in, like Max Scherzer, now 2 seasons ago, or Justin Verlander earlier this year, in this past offseason, and then you include the re-signings of guys like Jeff McNeil and Brandon Nimmo, this was a colossal disaster of a season for the New York Mets. 49-55 going into their series against the Kansas City Royals this week. This is a team that I know that you can sit there and there are some fans say, oh, look, the Mets are only 6.5 games out of the wild card. This team, even if they made no moves, even if they didn't make any moves and stood pat with Scherzer and Verlander and Robertson and Canha and maybe even Tommy Pham, okay, still wouldn't have mattered. This team was not going to make the playoffs. This team, for whatever reason, just did not mesh well as compared to the 2022 version that won 101 games. And a lot of that, as I have pointed out in separate videos, and as other Met fans have pointed out and has been pointed out even on SNY many times, it's all about the pitching. It's all about the pitching. The Mets didn't have great pitching this year. They let guys like Taijuan Walker and Chris Bassett walk away. Obviously, the Jacob deGrom thing, look, the Mets were a little more cautious there. You can't kill the Mets for that because of deGrom's injury history. Still, letting one of their best pitchers of all time walk away as well. The bullpen, certainly very different. The loss of Edwin Diaz in the World Baseball Classic. All these things culminating was going to make this season very, very difficult. And as it turned out, it became underwhelming and incredibly disappointing. So from that standpoint, it made sense for the Mets to try to hit the reset button after the way this season has fallen apart. And to do that now, you could take a look at this glass half full. And you could sit there and look at the prospects the Mets have brought in. They brought in, through all these trades that have been made, a grand total of 6 prospects who are top 20 prospects. They bring in the Luis Angel Acuna from the Texas Rangers in the Scherzer deal, who was one of the Rangers' Rangers' number 3 prospect. Right now, he's ranked as the Nets' number 2 prospect. Now they bring in Marco Vargas, who is an infielder, who a lot of people like, a lot of scouts like, coming out of the Marlins system. And now you bring in these 2 guys who come out of the Houston Astros farm system, and Drew Gilbert, who, yes, and let me preface by saying this. The Mets were also considering getting involved with either Baltimore or the Dodgers for this Verlander trade. And yes, the Dodgers and the Orioles have much deeper farm systems right now than do the Houston Astros. So let me just preface by saying that. But they bring in Drew Gilbert, who was the Astros' number one prospect this year. They drafted him in first round last year in 2022. And then they bring in Ryan Clifford, who, if you saw the tweet from Jeff Passan, saying that Clifford is a player that a lot of people like and that he may have better tools, maybe a better profile, if you will, long term than, let's say, Drew Gilbert. Again, this is what prospects are. They're prospects, and we're going off of scouting reports. If you just want the raw numbers, okay, Ryan Clifford hitting .291 in 2 different stops in the minor leagues with 18 home runs, 61 RBIs. All right, Drew Gilbert is hitting .274 in 2 stops, high A and double A, in the Houston Astros farm system. 12 home runs, 38 RBIs so far this year. So both have power. Both can drive in runs. Both are left-handed hitters. Both are outfielders. What their projection is beyond down the future, it's still years away. 2024, not likely. 2025, more likely. 2026, certainly. But at the end of the day, what the Mets are trying to do, again, glass half full here for a second, is they're trying to load up on minor league prospects so they can give themselves a chance to have players and develop players in a system that was really barren, that was starting to get barren. That being said, it's hard not to be completely disappointed and disheartened by what's happened here with this Mets team. First of all, let's take a look at it from the standpoint of the players who are still here, the veteran players. I'm talking the Pete Alonsos of the world. I'm talking the Francisco Lindors of the world, the Brandon Nimmos of the world, and the Jeff McNeils of the world. Okay? These are the guys who have either A, signed long-term deals, or B, in the case of Alonso, is a free agent after next year and is certainly at the age of 28, certainly you have to think, weighing what his future is going to be with this Met franchise, whether he wants to continue to be here or not. So when you are these veteran guys who were coming off of a 100-win season last year, and you're seeing this team tear it all down, not even a full year later, just rip it apart at the seams, at the first sign of trouble, it's hard not to sit there and say, am I next? Am I next to go? What's the future here for me? Did I, and if you're, let's say, Brandon Nimmo or Jeff McNeil who just signed big contracts, did I make a mistake? And then you see, of course, in the case of both Scherzer and Verlander with big contracts, and one reason why the Mets were able to pull off those deals was because Steve Cohen, as the richest owner in baseball, able to do something that a lot of owners can't do, and that's pay down these contracts and give these other teams that the Mets were dealing with, whether it be the Astros or the Rangers, a little bit of relief. Mets are paying Verlander $58 million of the remainder of his contract over the next roughly two plus years remaining on his contract to not pitch for them. They're paying $58 million. And the Astros, as a result, are paying about $29 million. That's it. Scherzer, same kind of deal. Mets are paying about I read $35 or $38 million of the remainder of his contract, and the Rangers are only paying $22.5 million remaining on Scherzer's deal. So the one thing that would worry me if I were one of these veteran players on the Mets would be, what's the value of this contract that I sign here with the Mets? And if I were a player, a free agent, pending free agent, looking at the Mets, considering coming to New York, and you see that the Mets are willing, even within 1 year, or in the case of Verlander, just months after signing a contract, they're willing to ship you out and get you out of there if things go south, that tells me that sometimes word isn't always the Mets' bond, and that is a concern. at least in my mind anyway. And I would imagine it has to be a concern for players, and it has to be a concern for the players that are still here or for pending free agents. So right now, I know a lot of Mets fans say, hey, maybe the Mets can go out there and go get Shohei Ohtani in the offseason. I think you can forget about that right now. More likely he was going to stay on the West Coast anyway. But with a team that's trying to tear things apart just a little bit here, trying to reevaluate who they are and their identity, would it make sense for them now to spend, $350, I think I'm underselling it here, $500 million on Shohei Ohtani, who's a great player? Wouldn't make a lot of sense right now. So that's where the Mets are right now. They are kind of in limbo. And again, it also plays into the who's going to be the president of baseball operations moving forward. Is it going to be David Stearns? That's been the hot rumor for months now that he's going to take over as the guy. I remember reading somewhere that if Stearns comes, he may end up bringing or trying to pry Craig Counsell out of Milwaukee, the Milwaukee Brewers manager, to take over as the Mets manager. I don't know how true that is. But again, that emphasizes the idea that maybe Buck Showalter could be on the way out. So there's a lot of moving pieces with the Mets moving forward. This season is totally over. It's a total disaster. 2024, in spite of what Billy Epler says, they are punting on 2024. They may be competitive from the standpoint of going out there and trying to win games. Maybe they try to get into the playoffs. But they're really not going for it all. And they're not going to spend a whole heck of a lot of money. Even Epler said they're not going to spend a whole heck of a lot of money in 2024. So this, for the Met fan, is a kick to the teeth. It's a punch to the gut. Glass half full. All you can do is hope that the prospects that they have brought in, the 6 of them, at least, be fair, 3 or 4 of them pan out, become something big. You'd love to see all of them become something big, but realistically, maybe 3 or 4 of them become something big and big contributors to the team moving forward. And that hopefully this rebuild is a short-lived one, and that Steve Cohen, with his deep pockets, will start to spend money again. But the Mets right now are in a very interesting, or a very precarious situation where we really don't know. They could go in so many different directions right now, in so many different ways, with the future of their franchise moving forward. Also, just a side note here, the Yankees have been very quiet at the trade deadline here. They have done virtually nothing. In fact, not virtually. They haven't done anything. I haven't seen them be linked to anything on any deal. That's a team that needs some pitching. They need another bat, but they're just very, very quiet, and they look like a team that's going nowhere. They're in last place in the AL East. They're losing games badly. They can't hit the ball right now. Aaron Boone's making mind-boggling decisions with his starting rotation, as he did with Domingo Germán on Monday night, deciding not to pitch him, even though he had been cleared with an armpit discomfort, decided not to pitch him, or at least start him in that game on Monday, and then he brought him in anyway in the 5th inning, and he pitched 5 innings and was great. Why didn't you just start him then? But that's what the kind of year the Yankees are dealing with, and as we all know with the Mets, this is the kind of year that they're dealing with, a disappointing, frustrating, and truly what could have been year for the New York Mets. It seems like we've been down this road so many times with the New York Mets in Flushing, Queens. And wouldn't it be ironic and sad in a way, too, for Met fans, if we are sitting here in October and we're watching whether it's the ALDS or the ALCS, and it's between the Houston Astros and the Texas Rangers, and a deciding Game 5 in the ALDS or a deciding Game 7 in the ALCS features Justin Verlander against Max Scherzer, and yes, you have Jacob deGrom sitting in the Texas Rangers dugout as well. Let that sink in, Met fans. It hurts. It hurts. It's going to hurt some more. Like and subscribe. We'll talk to you next time.